Hello, my dear friends. Today is February 19, 2026, in the year of the Lord. Today we are going to talk about the fullness of God in us. I'd like to start off by saying not one of us we have the fullness of God in us, but only Jesus Christ, the Lord of Lords and the King of Kings, has the fullness of God in him. And this is the first that I'm going to start. And then after I go through this, it's going to make clear exactly what I'm trying to say. My dear friends, I would like to read from Colossians chapter 1, verses 15 to 20. This is where it shows that Christ alone was, is, and will always have the fullness of God in him. And it also shows how he has the fullness of God in him, which we don't. So, the Son is the image of the invisible God, the one who is first over all creation, because all things were created by him, both in the heavens and on earth, the things that are visible and the things that are invisible, whether they are thrones or powers or rulers or authorities. All things were created through him and for him. He existed before all things, and all things are held together in him. That's why he has the fullness. He is the head of the body, the church. We are the church, and he is the head of the body. Okay? Who is the beginning? The one who is firstborn from among the dead, so that he might occupy the first place in everything. Because all the fullness of God was pleased to live in him. And he reconciled all things to himself through him. Whether things on earth or in the heavens, he brought peace through the blood of his cross. Now that we understand exactly how Jesus Christ has the fullness of God in him, let's see, all of us together being the church, my dear friends, we together collectively, and Christ being the head of the body, which is the church, that's when we all can have the fullness of God in us. But as one, as united. And I would like to give an example for that in 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 12 to 19. That's why Paul gives the example of the human body. All right? Christ is just like the human body, he says. A body is a unit and has many parts. We are the parts, my dear friends. And all the parts of the body are one body, even though there are many. We were all baptized by one Spirit into one body. Whether Jew or Greek, slave or free, we all were given one Spirit to drink. Certainly, the body isn't one part but many. If the foot says, I'm not part of the body because I'm not a hand, does that mean it's not part of the body? My point being said, the hand cannot say to the eye, I don't need you. Okay? Because the body will not be complete. The nose cannot say to the foot, I don't need you. Because the fullness of the body will not be without that. So all and every single part, whether it's a weaker part of the body or the stronger of the part of the body, all together makes one body, and Christ is the head. Us all united in one, collectively, we have the fullness of God in us. Now that we understand until this part, I would like to give some examples. We are all baptized as kings, priests, prophets. I've done a video about this before. Meaning, when God speaks to us, because we are the children of the Most High God, he doesn't need any permission to speak to us. So when he's going to speak, and God has his ways to speak, to communicate with us, to some he speaks in a vision, others in audible voice, to others he downloads, to others in a vision, to others in a dream. Different people have a different communication with the Father. Some others write, doesn't matter. The point being said is when the Lord communicates with us, he communicates in a different ways. So, my dear friends, when one receives a message, rest assured everything about that message, whatever God is saying, is not going to be in that message. Because if somebody receives the first part of the message, rest assured there is someone out there, another son or daughter of the Most High God, that will receive either the middle or the last part of the message. And I will give an example from the word of the Lord so we can understand what I mean. This is exactly why only Christ has the fullness in God, and we proportionately complete that. We, as one, united, we have the fullness. So if one receives the first part of the prophetic message that comes from the Lord, another will receive the last part. And that's how we can have the big picture of it. In 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 11 to 13, this is the chapter where God is not pleased with Solomon because his heart went after other women, foreign women. He took wives and different concubines, and he actually erected temples for them. These are the gods of Sidonites, Moabites, Ammonites, so on and so forth. So God was not pleased with them. And to top it all off, God had told Solomon not to do that, but he still went ahead and he did it. So let's read together what God tells him. The Lord said to Solomon, because you have done all this instead of keeping my covenant and my laws that I commanded you, I will most certainly tear the kingdom from you and give it to your servant. Even so, on account of your father David, I won't do it during your lifetime. I will tear the kingdom out of your son's hands. Moreover, I won't tear away the entire kingdom. I will give one tribe to your son on account of my servant David and on account of Jerusalem, which I have chosen. So what does Solomon receive? Solomon hears from the Lord. The Lord tells him, because you disobeyed, I'm tearing your kingdom apart, and I'm just going to leave to your son one tribe. That's what God tells Solomon. Now, in the same chapter, 1 Kings chapter 11, if we go down verses 29 to 32, we're going to see the rest of the message of what God is intending. And it actually comes to another prophet. It comes to prophet Ahijah, okay? Jeroboam was one of the officials in the army of the King Solomon, okay? He was but he rebelled against the king. While he left Jerusalem, this is Jeroboam, I'm talking about Jeroboam, Ahijah the prophet of Shiloh met him along the way. This is when Jeroboam rebelled and left King Solomon, and he's on his way. Ahijah the prophet meets him on the way. Ahijah was wearing a new garment. The two of them were alone on the countryside, so Ahijah tore his new garment into 12 pieces. He said to Jeroboam, take 10 pieces because Israel's God, the Lord, has said, look, I am about to tear the kingdom from Solomon's hand. I will give you 10 tribes, but I will leave him one tribe on account of my servant David and on account of Jerusalem, the city I have chosen from all the tribes of Israel. So the first part, who receives? Solomon. God tells him, because you disobeyed, this is what I'm going to do. I'm tearing your kingdom apart. And I'm not doing it during your lifetime. I'm going to do it during your son's lifetime. And I'm just going to leave one tribe to him because of because David has a place with me, because he was obedient. I'm just going to give your son one tribe. Then the Lord reveals to prophet Ahijah the rest of the prophetic message of what he's intending to do. Now, Jeroboam receives this message from prophet Ahijah that tells him those 10 tribes, when he actually tears his garment, he says these 10 tribes, God is going to give them to you. Solomon didn't receive that, but Ahijah received it. Okay? So now Ahijah receives the message that Solomon's kingdom will be torn apart and 10 tribes will be given to Jeroboam according to the Lord. All right? So if one receives the first part, the other will receive the second part to complete the bigger picture. Now, my dear friends, I want to give another example. Let's go to Daniel. Daniel was a very righteous prophet. We know that he lived during the time of King Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? He made him an official in his kingdom because he had the gift and the grace to interpret dreams. We know that. He was very wise. So with all the righteousness that Daniel had in him, in Daniel chapter 7, Daniel sees a vision of the 4 beasts. These 3 beasts, okay, which I believe was the lion, the bear, and the leopard. The 4th beast, my dear friends, he doesn't see what it is, but he only sees that it was a very fierce, horrifying, worse than any of the previous kingdoms, any of the 3 before, and it devoured everything, okay? It's like he was the worst of the worst. He doesn't see exactly what it is, but he knows that it's going to be one of the worst beasts ever to rise on the face of the earth. Now, if we go, my dear friends, to Second Esdras, the book of Esdras, it's an apocryphal book. Second Esdras chapter 12. In there, we're going to see that God allowed Prophet Ezra, because Prophet Ezra also received the vision, but he just didn't understand what to make out of this vision. So what happens is the Most High God allows him to receive the interpretation of that vision. So in Second Esdras chapter 12, verses 10 to 12, we read the following. He said to me, "This is the interpretation of the vision that you saw. The eagle you saw rising from the sea is the fourth kingdom." So, my dear friends, Daniel receives a fourth beast. He just does not know what it is. He cannot interpret it. He does not understand. He cannot make anything out of it. All he knows, it's a horrible beast, worse than any of the ones previously he saw. 4 beasts. The fourth one, he just doesn't get it. So in here, God gives it to Prophet Ezra. Says, this is the eagle that you saw coming out of the sea. This is the fourth kingdom, which is the same as Daniel saw. It appeared in a vision to your brother Daniel, but it wasn't interpreted for him as I now interpret it for you, or have shown it to you. My dear friends, we as being parts of the body make the church, and that's how we have the fullness of God in us. Daniel, as righteous as he was, he only saw that fourth kingdom. Whatever it's rising, the fourth beast will be very fierce and will be very horrifying. But Ezra saw the details of this eagle. As a matter of fact, if you guys want to go read the second book of Ezra, chapter 12, it gives the detail and the interpretation of this eagle, how many heads it's going to have, how many wings it has, pertaining to how many kings, even the 3 heads that the eagle has, how long each king is going to last, they will rule, who's going to die first. He gets like the detail of it, unlike what Daniel saw. Now, my dear friends, let me give you the third example. We know that, my dear friends, Jeremiah was a weeping prophet. So during the time of Jeremiah, God tells Jeremiah as a prophet that he will send Israel into exile. So they're going to go into captivity and will live in captivity for 70 years under the rule of Babylon, king of Babylon. Okay? Who saw this? Jeremiah saw this. We read that in Jeremiah 25, verses 11, 12, 13, and it's in 25. So, my dear friends, when Jeremiah is receiving the beginning of Israel going into captivity, and they're going to stay there for 70 years, and, they're going to serve the king of Babylon, who receives the rest, the final destination of what's going to happen with Israel? As a matter of fact, my dear friends, Isaiah receives, and if we read Isaiah 40 and all the way to 66, in this collection, we're going to see that God is giving hope, God is talking about redemption, God is talking about restoration, and God is certainly talking about glorious days coming, which is, one sees that Israel is going into captivity, and the other prophesies that Israel is actually going to come out of that captivity and be redeemed, be restored, and receive glorious days. All right? Now I'm going to give another example before I finish the video. In the book of Enoch, my dear friends, when we read the book of Enoch, we understand that in there, I don't know how many of you that read, but Enoch had a son, his name was Methuselah. So he actually gathers together his children, his family, and tells everybody that God is about to bring punishment upon the wicked, which were the Nephilim at that time, which we have the same issue and the same problem today. And he says that God is going to bring flood into this world to actually cleanse the earth. And when his son, his son's name is Methuselah. The funny part is, when Noah, comes to the face of the earth, so he, while he's living, and my dear friends, Noah also receives message from the Lord that, you know what, he's intending to bring flood on the face of the earth, and that, he needs to actually build an ark. Now, God did not tell Enoch how he will deliver his righteous grandchildren, okay? But he tells them that he will keep the righteous safe. He doesn't tell them how. When Noah was born and when Noah was living, God tells Noah to actually build an ark, and he gives them sufficient time. We're not talking about 1 decade, 2 decades. Sufficient time for Noah to build that ark, so that when that green light hits, which triggered the activity of the flood by the death of Methuselah. As soon as Methuselah died, which I believe his name means death sent, something to that effect. Like it was like a code that was activated as soon as Methuselah died, which he was about 969 years old when Methuselah died. That's when the flood came on the face of this earth, my dear friends. So God told Enoch that this is what he's intending to do, but he doesn't tell him the full story of how he intends to deliver his righteous children, grandchildren, so on and so forth. But when Noah is living, God tells Noah the same thing, that he's going to bring the flood, but he tells him that you need to build an ark because that's how I'm going to save you. This is why I mean, my dear friends, when one receives one message, it doesn't mean that all and every detail of God, whatever God is intending to do, is actually going to be enclosed in that message. No, it's not. As a matter of fact, that's why I say we do not have the fullness. We all collectively together as one body, which is the church, and Jesus Christ being the head, we make the fullness of, that's how we have the fullness of God in us. That's how we make up the fullness of God within us. So my dear friends, if somebody receives one message, rest assured that somebody else out there will get the rest of the message that's going to give a bigger picture of what God is intending to do. Now that I explained this, I just want to say very quickly, during these times that we are living, times of uncertainty, yes, there are a lot of people are talking about wealth transfer, and rest assured it's coming, my dear friends. That's going to happen. It's not that it's not going to happen, but I tell you something. I just want to say, you must be prepared in your hearts. That's why in every video I say stay grounded and rooted in Christ, and I've mentioned this so many times. We cannot make it out of this without Christ, my dear friends. We are living in a very sensitive time, at a sensitive peak point between in this battle and the war between the good and the evil. So we have to be rooted and grounded in Christ so that we can make it. Because before we get to that wealth transfer portion, my dear friends, we're going to have to go through some hard times. I would call it chastising times before we get to our destination, because there is a cleansing coming. So if one out there receives a message, this is what's coming, the other is going to receive another detail of how it's going to come and how it's going to end. Okay? So don't ever forget, I love you all with the love of Christ. Stay blessed until next time.